I vividly remember the first time I saw a Me Too post. I was walking down 9th Avenue on an afternoon in October, scrolling through my Instagram feed. The pictures of dogs and cats and people I've probably met like once in my life were replaced by these images of text that said, "Me too." So I quickly went to Google, and when I found out what it meant, I thought, finally people will know just how bad this issue really is. As a survivor of sexual assault, I now have the power and the privilege to stand up and say, "Me too." But there are those of us who cannot. This past year, I was placed as a fellow at Sanctuary for Families. Sanctuary for Families is the leading nonprofit service provider and advocacy organization for victims of domestic violence, sex trafficking, and gender-based violence. As a fellow, I work primarily on the issue of child sex trafficking in New York State, particularly how current legislation fails to protect its victims. Today, I'm going to tell you about how not all victims are able to stand up and say, "Me too," and how it is our duty to use our voices to represent the voiceless. People hear the term sex trafficking and think, oh, that's just some issue in another country far away that we don't need to worry about. But I'm here to tell you that we need to worry about it. Estimates suggest that at least 300,000 children are at risk of becoming commercially sexually exploited each year. And these are just the cases that we know about. It happens here in the United States, in New York State, in New York City, and in each of the 5 boroughs. And child sex trafficking is really just a euphemism for serial child rape. Now, there isn't a cookie-cutter mold for what victims of child sex trafficking look like, but pimps strategically target the most vulnerable of children. Children from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, children who have prior foster care involvement, and children who have already been victims of child sexual abuse. Many of these victims are running away from violent situations only to become entrapped by pimps, offering them promises of protection and family and love. And they can't just leave, because for many of them, this is the more preferable alternative. Imagine living a life where being forced by a man to sell your body 15 to 30 times a night was a better alternative than living at home. You can't, right? It's horrific. Current legislation in New York State does nothing to protect victims of child sex trafficking. New York is only one of 2 states that requires that prosecutors prove coercion in cases of child sex trafficking. How can a child be coerced if he or she is legally incapable of consenting to sex? These antiquated laws ensure that a child must face his or her trafficker in court. This isn't justice, this is re-traumatization of the victim, and this must end. Fortunately, there is legislation in the works that will amend this. The End Child Sex Trafficking Bill will remove the need for prosecutors to prove coercion in cases of child sex trafficking, and will remove the need for prosecutors to prove coercion in cases of child sex trafficking. However, even if and when this bill passes, our work isn't done. The Me Too movement has sparked the public dialogue about the issue of sexual harassment and sexual assault. The stigma surrounding a topic of conversation once shunned has been shattered, and people are becoming increasingly aware. Just as the 2-word phrase "Me Too" has given us a universal language of advocacy, a way to empower survivors and find strength in numbers, we must use our words to speak up for victims of child sex trafficking. We must spread awareness. The primary issue preventing change is the general lack of awareness. So whether it be contacting your legislatures and asking them to support the End Child Sex Trafficking Bill, attending an advocacy event, sharing this information with family and friends, or simply sharing a post on Facebook, I urge you to speak up for those who cannot and say, "Me too."